So today's lesson is based on a special triangle, which is called a right angle triangle. And using a right angle triangle, we are going to take a look at a Pythagorean theorem. Okay. So Pythagorean theorem, it describes both a geometric relationship and a numerical relationship of a right angle triangle. So what that means is that the area, so when I'm given a right angle triangle, the area of side A, which is, A times A, right? A and A. So the area of this square is going to be A squared. The area of B times B, which is B times B, right? B squared, right? That's the area, length times width. And in order to find the area of the C square, it's going to be C times C, which will give me the area of this square. So what that means is that if I were to add up the area of A squared plus B squared, I'm going to get the sum of the area of the C. So if I were to add this area and this area, I will be getting this area, which is the hypotenuse. So keep in mind, hypotenuse is the longest length, and it's always opposite from a 90-degree angle. So this is hypotenuse, opposite from 90 degrees, H. Now let's take a look. So find the measure of hypotenuse C when you're given A is 4 and B is 3. So as always, let's set up an equation. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A is 4, B is 3, and C is what we're looking for. So as you can see at the bottom, these are perfect squares, but you should know by heart up to number 12. Okay. So 4 squared is 16. Keep in mind, 4 squared is not 8. It's not 4 times 2. It's 4 squared means 4 times 4, which is 16. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then 3 squared is 9 equals C squared. So when you add it, it becomes 25 equals C squared. Now, because we're looking for C, we are opposite of squaring is square root both sides. So when you square root both sides, square root of 25 is going to be C is equal to 5. And the hypotenuse is 5 centimeter. Make sure you know how to use a square root button on your calculator. So try it out. And see, when you do square root of 25, there's a symbol here on your calculator, and it should give you 5. Okay, so let's try letter C, number 2C. In this case, let's identify the triangle. So the X is opposite from 90 degree. So that means this must be hypotenuse, which is the longest length. Now we know that we set up the equation as A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I could set it up as X squared plus Y squared equals Z squared. What does that mean? It means that the Z must be hypotenuse. Okay? From time to time, I will be using different letters. So it's not always going to be A, B, and C. So in this case, we're looking for X here. And we also know that it's a isosceles triangle because there's a 2 tick mark. That means this side must be also 11.1 centimeter. So because we're looking for a hypotenuse, this time I'm going to use different letters. Let's say I could do A squared plus B squared equals X squared, knowing that X is hypotenuse. So we know A is going to be 11.1 squared plus B is also 11.1 squared equals x squared. So using your calculator, you're going to do 11.1 squared, and that will give me 123.21, and 123.21 equals x squared. And then when you add the two, you will get 246.42. Now to find x, keep in mind we have to square root the both sides so that we get rid of square and square root. So when you square root it, you are going to get, so round to the nearest unit if necessary. Nearest unit means that you have to have whole number, no decimal. So x is equal to 15. It says 698. So that means when you round to the whole unit, it's going to be 16 centimeter. Okay, so make sure you are comfortable rounding to the whole number, which is, it means the nearest unit. Now let's continue and let's go over example 3. So sometimes you may not be using a, you may not be looking for a hypotenuse. You may be looking for different length, which we call legs. So let's take a look at letter B. For letter B, so let's identify where the hypotenuse is. So opposite from 90 degrees, this is going to be hypotenuse. Okay, so that means we must be looking for, let's say, A and B. A and B can interchange. So let's write down A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we're looking for A, which is x squared, plus B, we know it's 3 squared, and C is going to be 7 squared. Okay. If you want, you can rearrange in the beginning or later. So when you are looking for the leg and not the hypotenuse, you always have to subtract. So what does that mean? I need to move, because I'm looking for A, so I need to move positive B squared to the other side, because I want A to be alone. So what does that mean? A squared is equal to always the bigger one, the biggest area, which is C squared, minus B squared. Okay, so please keep in mind the bigger number minus the smaller number. Okay, and then you can plug it in after you rearrange. If not, let's say you decided to plug it in first. So it's x squared plus 3 squared is 9, 49. And now I'm looking for x squared. So I'm going to move positive 9 to the other side. So when you move positive 9 to the other side, x squared is on the left side alone. So we have bigger number, 49. Now positive 9 will now become negative 9. You're always subtracting when you're looking for leg and leg. And this is hypotenuse. Okay, so x squared is equal to 40. And don't forget, we got to square root it. Square root and square root. And then square root of 40 should give you x is equal to 6.325. So if I round it to the nearest unit, which is whole number, it's going to be 6 meter. Therefore, and don't forget, you got to square box it. Okay, good. Okay, let's go over the big ideas for example 3C. For 3C, we're given two triangles here, and we're looking for x. But to do Pythagorean theorem, you need to know two lengths. So let's say triangle 1 and triangle 2. To find x, we need to know this length, which we know, and we need to know this length, but we don't know what this length is. So therefore, what we need to do is we got to do triangle 1 first. So step number 1 is that you need to find the hypotenuse of triangle 1. And after you find triangle 1, then you're going to use triangle 2 to find x using 12 centimeter and the hypotenuse that you found using step number 1. Okay, so the answers are attached on the next in the booklet, the answer booklet. So try it out on your own and hopefully you will get the correct answer. Okay. Next. So for number 4, it says determine the length of the diagonal of 50 meter by 8 meter rectangle. So I can begin by drawing a 15 meter and 8 meter. And they're saying determine the length of the diagonal. Diagonal is always the opposite ends of the shape. So this is a diagonal. So to find this, you notice that, oh, it separates into true triangles. So let me concentrate on this triangle here. Triangle, the bottom triangle. So to do this, we notice that, okay, if this is 15, then this also must be 8 meter because it's a rectangle. So this must be hypotenuse, which is opposite from 90 degree. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A could be 15 squared, b could be 8 squared, and c is what we're looking for, the diagonal. And then 15 times 15 will give me 225 plus 64 equals c squared. And then c is equal to 289 equals c squared. And don't forget, we square root both sides. And then when you square root both sides, you should get c is equal to 17. So every time you notice that it's a word problem, you have to end with the sentence. That's how you are going to get your communication mark. Therefore, the diagonal is 17 meter. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so then this is going to be the homework for lesson number 3. And now we are going to move on to lesson number 4, which is the application of the Pythagorean theorem. So application means that you are working on a word problems. So let's continue with number 1. So we will be looking at different applications using the theory of Pythagorean theorem. So consider the right triangle below. Line segment XY over here connects with the midpoint of PQ. So this is a midpoint. Midpoint. And then the midpoint of PQ to the midpoint of PR. So PR must be the midpoint as well. So we may not know what midpoint is. Midpoint is right in the middle point. So therefore, middle point means that if I were to be given, let's say this length, this point x must be right in the half of the distance. So if the length is, let's say, 4 meters, the midpoint over here must be 2 and 2, right at the half. Okay, so we are looking for x, y. So we're looking for this distance here. Okay. So to find this distance, well, let's identify what kind of triangle. So we are given a big triangle where PQR is a big triangle. Okay. So it looks like 16 by 12. And then we're also given a small triangle at the top, which is PXY. And this is the big one, PQR. And what we're looking for XY here. Okay. So let's say let's say we're looking for length here. And we know it's a right angle triangle. So just by looking at this, we know the length of PX. Why? Because it's right at the midpoint, in the middle. So what we can do is you can divide 16 by 2. So 16 by 2 is 8. So this length must be 8. Okay. Good. So to find xy here, we need to know the two length, 8 and py, but we don't know py. So what we can do is let's work on the big triangle first by finding the hypotenuse here. So for this one, it's going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 16 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. We're looking for hypotenuse, c. So 16 times 16 is 256, plus 12 times 12 is 144, equals c squared. And then when you add them together, you will get 400. And square root both sides, you will get 20. So c, the hypotenuse, is 20. So from P to R, it's going to be 20 meters long. So now that we understand, I think we can find the length of PY. Why? Because we know that this Y is at the midpoint, right in the middle. So again, we're going to divide it by 2 because it's at the half of this distance. So it's going to be 10 meters. So PY must be 10. So now that we have all the information, we know the two sides, and we know the hypotenuse is 10. So we're looking for a leg. So if we're looking for a leg, we got to subtract. So let's try it. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And I could rearrange it. So let's say I'm looking for a. So I'm going to move positive b squared to the other side. So a squared must be big number, c squared minus b squared. So a squared is equal to, c is 10, oops, and b is 8. And then c squared is 100, and 8 squared is 64. And then you subtract 100 minus 64, should give you 36. And square root both sides, and you will get a is equal to 6. So therefore, the length, which we just found, which is a, must be 6 meters. Therefore, final statement, the length of xy is 6 meters long. And make sure you do a square box for your final answer. Okay. Now let's go over example 3. So a 20-foot ladder is leaned against the wall. If the base of the ladder is 8 feet from the base of the wall, how high up on the wall does the ladder reach? So as always, we need to have a diagram ready in front of us if it's a word problem. So I'm going to draw a wall at the bottom. And we know that the ladder, this is the ladder, right, is leaning against the wall. And the ladder is 20 foot. And the base of the ladder, so from the base to the ladder here, this is 8 foot. Or 8 feet, sorry. And they're saying how high? High up the wall means the height. So we could say, we know that this is a Pythagorean theorem because it makes a right angle triangle. So let's set up the equation. So it will be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But because we're looking for the leg and we're given the hypotenuse, I could move b squared to the other side. So a squared equals c squared minus b squared. And then we can plug it in. So x squared is equal to c squared, which is 20 squared, minus 8 squared. So 400 minus 64 is x squared. So x squared, when you subtract it, you will get 336. And opposite of squaring, you got to square root both sides. So x, it will give us, it's about 18.3 feet. Okay, so you can round to the whole number if you like. So therefore, the ladder, how high the ladder will reach 18 feet up the wall. And that should be your final answer for a word problem. Make sure you always draw the diagram and answer with a paraphrase.